And so I've asked Derek to give us a little bit about the rundown of the HB 133 that's going through Florida legislature. So we'll have Derek give us a rundown on that. He'll take any questions, and then if folks want to stay on afterwards and have any questions from that, we can stay on afterwards. Go ahead, Derek.
Thanks, Gary. Yeah, I took some time to kind of go through it, and I have it up on my screen here. So apologize if I'm not looking at it. I'm trying to look at. I have highlighted some issues or areas. So if you don't know, it's the proposed legislature is basically to have a tenant pay fees in lieu of a security deposit. And I think Kara had mentioned, she didn't see a benefit of landlords having to do that. And first, when I read through it, I kind of saw it that way too. And I think who introduced the bill and the reason they did it, and I mentioned this Gary in a private call when he called me, is tenants sometimes have a heavy burden with move-in. First, last, and security. I mean, if you're thinking about it's a $3,000 a month rental, that's $9,000, and I don't know a lot of tenants who have $9,000 cash laying around to just put up just to a place to live. So I think that's most of my reading and interpretation of this proposed bill. That's what I think it was geared towards, is kind of alleviating some of that financial burden on the tenants to get in. And again, I want to caution this isn't approved yet. So it could be, but if it does, looking at some of the important provisions here, one of the big things I noticed is that they made sure to classify in this proposal of the bill that it is not classified as a security deposit under 8343 subsection 12, which is the definition of security deposit for landlord tenant issues. So it's interesting that they couch it that way, because then from a landlord's perspective, it's going to remove that burden from you from 8349, which is, you have 30 days to make a claim, 15 days to return it if you don't. One of the biggest things I saw in here is regarding the insurance claim for the landlord. And I think this is where they try to protect the landlord's interest. Basically, it states that, you can make an insurance claim on the damages the tenant did, and you can get paid for those from the insurance company. And then where the flip side is, the insurance company can then go after the tenant for those damages. And again, I won't go into the minutia of it. It lays out specific rules of what can and can't be done, but I'm just trying to give you a bird's eye view of this. And that would also allow the tenant to have any defenses against the insurer. So I don't know how insurers would feel about this, having to seek money from tenants and then defend landlord tenant issues to which they have no purview of. The biggest thing, one of the other biggest things I saw is that, it has to be in writing. There's going to be basically a standard template form for it in terms of like a disclosure that you're going to have. There's about 8-9 requirements that'll be a part of it to be in the writing. One of the issues I saw that was interesting is that the tenant can choose to pay in monthly installments as opposed to a whole lump sum. I mean, it has to be agreed upon by both the landlord and tenant, but I thought that was interesting that it's kind of giving the tenant the choice. So that's just something to be aware of, right? Because, if they're like, hey, I want to pay in installments, you might be like, okay, well, I'd rather have it up front. Let me look at it. I'm looking at my highlighted sections here. If they don't pay it, no, actually, it's not an eviction. You have to terminate under this proposed legislation. This is a separate agreement that becomes kind of like an addendum to your lease. So you would have to terminate that fee agreement, and then they would then be responsible for a security deposit, a regular security deposit outlined in your rental agreement, right? So then if they don't pay that, then that's where it kind of gets sticky, right? Because they've already moved in. Let's say they canceled the agreement 6 months in,
right? And
then they owe a security deposit. How, from an eviction standpoint, I'm looking at it, I'm like, well, how am I going to bring a 3-day notice to pay? Well, it's not rent, it's technically a security deposit. Well, how is that classified in the rental agreement? If you're just using the standard FAR bar leases, it doesn't address that. Now, if you, and I think Ed mentioned something about basically having a custom lease. You could build into that, protect against that scenario. But if you don't have a custom lease, how is that get addressed? I don't know. Right. And that's a great question. Great question, Sadie.
Derek,
the
how
other-
does it,
Go
how,
ahead.
how does it benefit at all the landlord?
I think the insurance standpoint is what's geared to protect the landlord in terms of, hey, if there's damages, as opposed to having to chase the tenant and sue the tenant, you can basically just make an insurance claim. And if the insurance pays it, he then literally passes the ball off the burden off into to the insurance company to go seek reimbursement of those costs. And the one thing that's key though, too, for landlords is this is optional. It's not mandatory. So you don't have to do this. You don't have to participate in this at all. It's up to you and how you feel. What's your risk palette, right? That's what I always tell your landlords. What's your risk palette? And then the caveat is though, if you do, you have to offer that. If let's say you have a fourplex and you offer it to one, you then for the next, if you get 3 new tenants in the other 3 units, you have to abide by that fee agreement for those new tenants. Otherwise, you have to opt out for all of them. Yeah. So again, it is, in my opinion, my purely opinion, I think it's geared towards alleviating the tenant's burden to move in and giving a landlord the option to have a tenant that otherwise would not be able to pay. Because you may have a tenant with a 800 credit score that can't pay $9,000 move-in, but they're like, hey, I can pay the first and last, and I'll pay this fee over 12 months. 3,000 divided by 12 months is a lot easier to pay. But you know, I encourage you, if you get a chance to read the bill, you probably don't enjoy it as much as I do. I love to get knee deep in this stuff and try to figure out what, you know, interpret what is being going on. But that's my take of it so far. And again, it may be modified by the time it gets to the point where it will pass, and who knows, it may never even pass. And at that point, it could just be a speculative talk here. So hope that helps.
I did some study on it last night and did some analysis. And one thing too, need to understand that they're not talking about your regular property insurance. This is a separate insurance form. It's called lease insurance. And it seems like they're really trying to push us towards this insurance product, which is lease insurance, which allows you to basically in the bill, it's you have 15 days to notify your renter after they moved out that they have created these damages, and you have to enumerate the damages and how much it's going to cost to fix it. And then after those 15 days, then they have 15 days to respond. But after that, then you can send it to this lease insurance, and the lease insurance will pay you for that basically. And then they turn around and go after the leasing. So the benefits for the landlord, number one is the fee is a fee. It's a non-refundable fee. So you can accept this fee and in lieu of a security deposit, but there's no requirement for you to keep it in a separate account. There's no requirement for you to do anything with it. You don't even have to purchase the insurance with it. But the idea is that you can take this fee, say $100 a month, and then you buy lease insurance for like $20 a month. And then you use that lease insurance in lieu of a security deposit. And like Derek said, it can help you get your vacancies filled by giving this option to the leaseor, and so, or the leasee. And so the advantages there are, it helps you get people in. You can use that fee to pay for insurance. And one of the provisions in it is that if they decide that they want to say they get a big tax return and now they want to pay their security deposit, then you have to give them the option of getting out of that monthly payment and going back to a security deposit normal. So there can be benefits there on both sides. From what I saw, it looks like it's pretty balanced right now, the way the bill stands, and that there are advantages for both the landlord and the tenants, especially if you were to utilize that lease insurance, where you basically have an out where you don't personally have to go after your tenant, should they cause damages or should they fail to pay some of the rent or some things like that where they still owe you money, you turn that over to the insurance pays you, and then they're the ones that take it up with the tenant after that.
I have a question. What if you add it to the rent? The insurance payment. You
And
just
you
add it
can
to the
have-
rent.
It's in the provision that the fee can be set up to be paid at the same time as the rent. But it's not part of the rent. It has to be kept separate.
Okay.
The rent is $2,000 and $150 is the fee. So they can write you a check for $2,150, but you have to designate that that's a
Okay.
$150 of that is for their non-refundable fee.
Hi, Gary, this is Joy. I'm sorry, I came in a little late. I was just wondering, you were mentioning the bill. What is the bill called?
This is HB 133 and it's going through the Florida legislature right now. House Bill
133.
133, and there's a related bill, Senate 494, which is basically, it's very similar, almost the same.
Senate
494.
Senate
Yeah.
494. Is that something that we can get online to read?
Yeah, you can look it up in floridasenate.gov.
Okay, thank you.